My name is Kathy Andreka, and my presentation is entitled, Does Exposure to Media Violence Increase an Individual's Likelihood of Engaging in Violent Behaviour? This presentation discusses the rationale, aim and hypothesis of the research article, participants, methods and findings, conclusions, implications and limitations, and a brief conclusion. The research article is number 2 from my article matrix being Ybarra, Dina West, Marco, Leaf, Hamburger and Boxer 2008, Linkages between Internet and Other Media Violence for Seriously Violent Behaviour by Youth, from the American Journal Pediatrics, issue 122, volume 5. In the US, youth violence is a significant public health issue, with costs estimated over $158 billion per annum. Research indicates that exposure to media violence is not the single reason for youth violence, but is the single most remediable contributing factor. I searched the ABS for Australian information about teens committing violent crimes, and note no official statistics are kept about the cause of crimes carried out by Australian teens. I reviewed an Australian study conducted by Tumbura and others in 2013 about youth violence in Australia. There was no suggestion that media violence was the leading cause of violent behaviour in youth in Australia. In the Ybarra et al. Study, a key term used is seriously violent behaviour, or SVB, which was defined as committing shooting or stabbing, aggravated assault, robbery, sexual assault. Rationale: there is substantial evidence of short-term effects of violence in the media on arousal, thoughts and emotions. Whether this relates to SVB is not known. Exposure to media violence is associated with reports of SVB, and associations seem especially strong for youth to report that many, most or all of the websites they visit depict real people engaged in physical violence. The researchers posed the question, does exposure to violence online result in SVB, as it does when exposed to other violent media? The aim was to examine if a link between the viewing of violent online media by teens and subsequent SVB exists. Consequently, the hypothesis was teens who view online media violence are more likely to display serious violent behaviour. There were 1,588 participants, both male and female, aged 10 to 15 years, all in the US. Participants were required to be able to read English and have used the internet in the past 6 months. The researchers used a national Harris Poll online survey called Growing Up with Media, conducted in August and September 2006. A sample was obtained via an opt-in panel. Households were enrolled using a stratified random sample based on age and gender. Youth respondents were recruited and consent obtained by researchers from an appropriate adult. Youth respondents took a 21-minute survey. The response rate was calculated as the number of individuals starting the survey divided by the net number of email invites. The overall response rate was 26%. The dependent variable was committing SVB. The independent variable was exposure to violence in online media in the past year. The response options were on a 4-point Likert scale, with 1 being almost none, none, to 4 being almost all. Background variables such as race, ethnicity, internet use, substance use, demographics and academic performance were some of the aspects investigated. Data was weighted to reflect the population of adults with children aged 10 to 15 years in the US. Propensity weighting was used to adjust for an adult respondent's propensity to be online. Valid data was required for 80% of the variables, and consequently 3 households were dropped. Logistic regression was the technique used for quantifying associations. There were 19 findings, and the key findings were: exposure to media violence was a significant predictor of SVB. A response of many, most or all of the websites visited depicted violence, meant a 5 times greater likelihood of reporting SVB compared with the response of the website did not show people engaged in violence. Exposure to real violence on the internet may be more immersive or interactive than other types of violent exposure. This raised the question, does visiting violent websites increase the likelihood of SVB, or are those who undertake SVB more likely to visit violent websites? Or is the relationship bidirectional? As visits to violent websites increase, the odds of reporting SVB increase 50%. Reducing youth exposure to violent media is important to violence prevention. Note that a large proportion of youths had not heard of these violent websites. 13 conclusions and implications were drawn from this research. Key ones include viewing media violence is associated with self-reports of SVB. For some children, viewing media violence increases aggressive behaviour, and this may also apply to SVB. The internet is important to teens for social and self-expression aspects, so balance is needed to address the issues. Inform and empower parents to reduce youth exposure to online violence by installing blocking or filtering software. Preventions for youth violence should address a range of influences. The study had a number of limitations. First, there was a relatively small sample size. The research didn't enable causation determination, and prior research suggested younger children may be affected when exposed to violent media, so the behaviour reported may be from viewing violent media at a younger age. As a self-reporting survey, under or over-reporting of behaviour was possible. The psychological impact of viewing violence online and the relationship with other symptoms or disorders was not investigated. My conclusions. This research does add weight that media violence exposure increases aggressive behaviour. Prevention and intervention measures should address a range of influences. Longitudinal research is needed to confirm and expand on the research undertaken. Research needs to be conducted with young Australians to determine applicability for Australia. Thank you for your time and attention.